Hello class, I officially welcome you to this course, Purposive Communication. For lesson 1, we have communication principles and ethics. So this would serve as a review because I know that this lesson you already encountered this one during your junior high school and of course senior high school. So this would serve as a refresh of all these ideas and concepts involved in communication. Now, before we proceed, it's important to understand the lesson objectives of this lesson. So, you are expected, class, to define communication, identify the components of communication, contrast verbal and nonverbal communication, describe the various communication barriers, and demonstrate the ethics in communication at the end of this lesson. So that's our goal, class. That's our objectives. Hopefully, we can achieve it together. Now, your first task is to do this one. Imagine a world where communication does not exist. What kind of life would we have? You have 5 seconds to do this one. In 3, 2, 1. The possible answers to these questions are: there would be no talking. So the world would be in total silence. There would be no development. Remember, class, that our growth and development is signified by our capacity to communicate. Through communication, we learn things. We learn new ideas, pieces of information, concepts about life. There would be no relationship. Yes, class. All types of relationship. Romantic relationship, family, friendship. No? So, communication is the one that sustains the relationship. If there would be no communication, that is equal to no relationship at all. No love. How can we understand the whole idea of love if we don't experience it through communication, right? And of course, our life would have no meaning. Our life would have no purpose because, of course, we don't know how to establish relationship. We don't know how to love. Remember? So basically, we don't know what's the meaning of our life. We only exist. We're just like flower vases in this world, class. Exist, but no meaning. Alright? So, to make the long story short, class, the world would be lifeless without communication. It would be dim, no? No colors, no? Black and gray only. Black, gray, white, rather. Okay? So, with that, communication is very important. It's very important to human language. In fact, class, you cannot separate communication from a language. Language, of course, is socially constructed. It means that it cannot exist on the very first place if you don't use it in various communicative settings. Now, it says here, communication is a process. It is the process which involves the transmittal of message, whether through uttering of sounds or showing signals by the communicators and the receiver. It is an unlimited way of expressing ideas, opinions, and emotions. Why unlimited? Because there are many ways of sharing your ideas and opinions, class. We don't only limit ourselves through oral communication. If we cannot outspeak our ideas, then we can write it. We can use body language. right? So there are many ways to express ourselves. So communication is the key. It's the key to all types of relationships, the key to growth and development, to love, and of course to meaningful life. It's a very powerful tool, for it can change what happens, what had happened, what is happening, and what will happen. Alright. Now, how does communication work? To know the answer to this question, let's refresh our minds of the components of communication. Yes, I know that you are very familiar with this thing. First, we have sender. The sender is the source of information, no? And then we also have the message. The message is the information relayed by the sender to the receiver or the interpreter. The medium or channel. Medium or channel is the tool which is used by the sender to relay the message. So it could be oral or written, verbal or non-verbal, personal or non-personal. And of course, we also have the receiver. The receiver is the recipient or decoder of the information given by the sender. The feedback or the response or the reply to the message, no? And then of course we have the presence of the noise. The noise is a barrier that can affect in the transmittal of the message. Now, these components, class, exist in a particular context of communication. Context is the place or situation where the exchange of thoughts happen. So it could be a classroom discussion, a phone call, a meeting, no? So that's the context. Now, again, communication process starts with the sender's ideas that form as a message. It is then transmitted to the receiver with the use of medium or channel. Once it reaches the receiver, the recipient decodes the meaning of the information until a feedback is given. And then, of course, it reaches the sender and the communication goes on and on. No? The goal of every communication class is understanding. If the sender and the receiver don't understand each other, then that means that the communication process fails. Okay? Let's proceed. On the other hand, we also have codes of communication. Effective communication depends largely on the use of the codes of communication. We have two, and the first one is what we call the verbal communication. Verbal communication makes use of words and sounds. It could be written or oral. For written, it can be in the form of texting, memorandum, literary pieces, or emails. Now, for oral class, it could be seen in public speeches, in storytelling, online conversation, etc. So long as it uses words and sounds, then it belongs to verbal communication. The second one, we have nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication makes use of non-linguistic symbols such as touch, sign language, facial expressions, body language, tone of voice, clothing, and artifacts. So there are many non-verbal cues, class, and use non-verbal cues to support our verbal message, right? So say for example, when we are delivering a speech, we don't just stand there on the stage and then speak like a robot. No, we need to actually use body language, gestures, right? So we need to maintain eye contact with our audience. We need to vary our facial expressions. Now, nonverbal communication or nonverbal cues are more ambiguous. So when you say ambiguous class, it has multiple meanings. So what we see is not always what we get. What is told is not what really is meant. Example, when someone winks at you, it could mean greeting, a secret, a joke, or a show of affection. Okay? This sign class, it could mean okay or money. I know that you know this character, so it's Joker. So a smile does not always mean happiness. No, sometimes it actually means grief. Alright. So, yes, I actually mentioned a while ago that there are noise. No? Noise are the barriers to communication. They are the ones that prevent, no? They are the ones that prevent the speaker and the receiver to communicate continuously. So they are the ones that impede the communication process. There are two major classifications of communication barriers. But before we proceed, I want you to recall your most awkward conversation with someone. What made it awkward? Was it you, or was it him or her? Now, whatever answer you have to these questions, the one thing that is sure is that the barriers to communication made that conversation awkward. Okay? So, yes, the first type of barriers to communication is the internal barriers. These are the things that can impede communication where one doesn't necessarily have control over and take place inside the body or the mind. Additionally, it has three types. The first one we have personal barriers. So it includes personal discomfort, poor attention under attention, close-mindedness, and insufficient filtration. Say for example, you are listening to your teacher and you are not actually listening very well because you are uncomfortable, because there are many things that are going on inside your mind. So these barriers are considered personal barriers to communication. Second, we have intrapersonal. I reckon that maybe most of us have experienced being embarrassed in front of the class or in front of other people. Okay, so it may cause us trauma, no, or negative emotion. So this one is what we call the intrapersonal barrier. Okay, and of course the language. Lack of vocabulary, our peculiar accent, the dialect, no, the mispronunciation of the words, semantic gaps. Okay, so these are the linguistic barriers to communication. For example, class of linguistic barrier. This is very apparent in social media, no, and there are many more examples other than this one. Okay. Paul. Be careful, you'll fall in the swimming pool. So, when you first hear this message class, you might stop for a moment, no, and ponder what it actually means, right? So, because there is a mispronunciation of the words, then it prevents you to automatically understand the message, right? So, it actually goes like this. It's Paul, be careful. No? You'll fall in the swimming pool. Okay, but here it's actually the same, no? The four utterances are made the same. So Paul. Okay. Let's proceed with the second type of barriers. It's what we call the external barrier. These are the things that can hold back communication that is taking place outside the body or mind. And yes, the first example is, or the first type is the environmental barrier. Okay, so the noise that come from the transportations, musical instruments. Okay, so that these are examples of environmental barriers. And of course, social-cultural barriers: gender, beliefs, ethics, values, motives, rules and regulations, right? Okay, so for example, class, you are a Bisaya, and then you are conversing with a Tagalog person, no? You are using the term langgam. Okay, so in Bisaya, langgam is a bird, but in Tagalog, it means ant. So, um, in the conversation or the communication process, it may cause misunderstanding because um you may think that both of you are referring to the same thing, but you are you are not actually talking about the same thing. So miscommunication, misinterpretation of the message happens. Okay, so another example of this is the use of taboo words, no? Taboo. So in your culture, these are the harams, right? So it causes chaos, it causes miscommunication. Alright, now for us to actually achieve the goal of communication, which is understanding, we need to uphold the ethics in communication. When you say ethics, that is something to do with the correct way, no? Correct way of communicating with other people. Doing the correct way, and then of course avoiding the wrong way. The first one we have, always treat others in the same way you want to be treated. If you want to actually be respected at the end of the day, then you give the same respect, right? So that's it. Second, be sensitive to the feelings of others. Rather, you need to empathize with other people. You put yourself in the situation of other people. So you don't carelessly blabber words, carelessly express your opinions and ideas. You need to actually think of what might other people feel if they hear this message from you. Alright, third one, acknowledge the source of idea and information. Okay, so it's very unethical to just copy and paste information from the internet, and then you don't acknowledge the author of the information. So it's actually as if you're owning the information. So it's very unethical. Plus, it's wrong. No, it's very wrong. That's why when we quote somebody, again, it's important to acknowledge the author. That's why I really hate plagiarism. And of course, speak the truth without prejudices and judgments. So you don't stretch the truth, you don't alter it. Okay? So, kung ano yung sinabi, that's it. You don't add or subtract any information from it. I know that we have our own personal biases. No, but as much as possible, set it aside. Lastly, we have give everyone the chance to speak equally through respecting the personal boundaries of others without prejudgment. So you have to learn how to listen. You need to keep an open mind. Alright? And of course, you don't actually dominate the conversation. dominate the conversation just because you want to. Okay, so other people might have relevant ideas as well, so you need to commit it to memory. All right, so I guess that ends my presentation. Now for your activity, you are going to do charade. Okay, so for the first item of the general instruction, you need to make yourself familiar of the game charade. So search the internet or ask your family or your friends about the mechanics of the game. Second, choose one specific word you want to act out. Number 3, record a video of yourself acting out the mystery word for 1 to 2 minutes. Remember class, 1 to 2 minutes only. Number 4, reveal the mystery word at the last part of the video record. Okay? Number 5, upload your video in YouTube and link it to Edmodo. Again, in YouTube, not in Facebook, not in Google Drive. It's important as well that you indicate your name. Do not forget your name, class. Lastly, criteria for grading is as follows. Okay? Creativity 10 points, quality 10 points, clarity 10 points, abidance to instruction 5 points, punctuality 5 points, a total of 30 points. Okay? So, thank you very much. Maraming salamat. Daghang salamat. Salamat. I hope that you understand this lesson very well.